Howdy folks, and welcome to another episode of Stanley and the Sea Can. All right, so today we've got here something, a little gem, the WK180-C Gen 2 stripped upper. So this is, pretty common. We've now got the non-reciprocating charging handle here and everything that they've got. And some people have asked us before to make some upgrades or make some improvements to these things. And so I thought, well, what a better way. It's great we sell parts, we have things for sale, but how do you know what they're for? Where do they go? So, okay, let's show you. So in this particular mock-up, we've got a standard Gen 2 upper, and well, I guess we should put that plastic bushing in there, shouldn't we? Well, the way they come from the factory is this little plastic guy is in that hole. And so that's great, but it's plastic. And when you're actually using the firearm, this is the piston spring assembly that does your cycling. It's pushing, the spring here is pushing directly on the front face of this plastic, which, it seems all fine and dandy, but this is kind of hard, which hard usually implies brittle. And as this piston does its stroke, we're going to go back a good chunk to, maybe there or so, right? And in worst case scenario, it would bottom out. If you're way over gassed, you're going to bottom this spring out, and that's what's going to actually stop it. All of this pressure on a single point, you can see there's a single point of the spring. It doesn't have a ground end, and it's going on this piece of plastic. So the plastic breaks. Another thing about it is perhaps some of the really fancy lubricants or some more aggressive lubricants or something you might put on your firearm when you're cleaning and stuff has a potential to damage this plastic piece. I personally have never seen a failure because of that. It just comes down to people's preference. But I have seen them definitely crack and break before because of the spring pressure over gas issues. So what we've got and here is a brass bushing now to replace the plastic piece. And we've got this interesting little cutout here, semicircle. So kind of backtracking a quick sec there, you can see here this barrel nut, which is going to be on holding your barrel in place, is covering or partially covering the bottom of that hole where the plastic thing goes in. Approximately perfectly that much. So how do you change, if you wanted to change the plastic thing or whatnot, you can't really change it without either cutting the plastic piece so it has a little notch out of the bottom, or removing your barrel nut, which is a lot of work. And if you don't have the right tools, like a torque tool to go inside and all these other things to retorque it, reset all the timing and things, really shouldn't be hard, but if you don't have the tools and vices, it would probably be an absolute disaster of a job. So we've got these beautiful little brass bushings that can drop in there. And we just kind of put that chamfer or the little radius cut on there, and you can wiggle it right in, and it goes in, drops in without the taking the barrel nut off. So it's a nice little upgrade there. You can rotate it a little bit if you want to kind of lock in behind the barrel nut, but it's not really required. It can't go anywhere because, again, the spring from the piston is pushing on it and holding it in. So brass is a nice soft material, and what we can see and through extensive testing and such, you'll see that this little sharp edge here of the spring can kind of bury itself in there, and eventually it creates more and more contact. So this is a very long-lasting solution, and theoretically you'll never have to replace it. But if you do need to replace it, they just quickly drop right out. You could take off your handguard with a couple screws in this area here, slide it off. And then your gas piston assembly, well, we all know how that comes apart. It's one screw out of the front of your gas block and away you go. The whole spring system would come through the gas block. So, on to the next thing. This is a standard OEM Gen 2 charging handle, which goes in here and slides back and forth, right? And it locks in there on that little detent, and that's great. So now if you had your firearm in the field, you'd have a big gap here, and stuff could get in there, and it's less than ideal if you're walking through the bush or whatever. Same with your ejection port. It's wide open. There's no way to kind of protect it from getting gunk, dirt, snow, whatever, rocks in there. So what we came up for that is a full-length charging handle. So it's got the same ball detent in there to engage there. So now we can slide it in, and when it locks, you have positive lock, and you've got the entire slot and then some covered. So now you're at a much more kind of tightened up, hatch down to situation here, lockdown situation on this side of the firearm. And you know, it's a common upgrade. They are expensive because it's well, it's a real pain in the butt to machine something so thin and so narrow that's made of aluminum. It's hard to hold. Okay, and then the other side of this, we mentioned briefly that this ejection port doesn't have any protection, or you can get ingress of dirt and debris and such in there. So the fix for that is basically using a dust cover. So why reinvent the wheel? So we made a generation 2 or 1 upgrade, 2 upgrade compatible upper receiver for the WK that features this beautiful pocket here that's just for a, fits perfectly an AR-15 style dust cover. So you could use an OEM style, you could use a Magpul or Strike Industries or whatever brand you want in there. Just fits right in, locks in, same as normal, put the pin through. You may have to take your barrel nut off with certain options, but there are some you can kind of compress the spring on the pin for the dust cover and not have to take off your barrel nut and barrel assembly. This also features a shell deflector. Some people would enjoy having a shell deflector on their firearm. It's not always required, but the original Gen 2 doesn't have that. So we have a 3D printed part that would go on there to kind of emulate this look. It kind of sits right here and clips onto the pick rail underneath your scope rings. The last thing I thought I could tell you about the WKs is this is your carrier, right? Your standard bolt carrier. This is the front side, the business side. And there's questions occasionally as to what's a Gen 1 carrier, what's a Gen 2, what's a hybrid, and on and on. So the Gen 1 WKs, you remember, had a thread-in charging handle that was reciprocating. It was threaded into this hole. It's an M6 by 1 thread in there. Then the Gen 2 now needed a little slot here cut out so that the little tab of the charging handle can go in there and catch onto the carrier and slide the whole thing back and forth. So ours is basically the same design, right? Goes in there, and that's how that works. And then a hybrid carrier has both this threaded hole and this front feature for the non-reciprocating charging handle. So technically in my hand here, this is a hybrid carrier. If it looked like this and it didn't have anything under my thumb, it just had a threaded hole, that's a Gen 1 only carrier. And if it didn't have that threaded hole there, it just had that piece there, it would be only a Gen 2 carrier. And that's about it, guys. That's a quick rundown of some Gen 2 WK stuff. A lot of this stuff is used for upgrading a Gen 1. There's thousands of them out there. So you can upgrade your Gen 1 WK into a Gen 2 and get some nicer features. There was a Gen 3 released just before the most recent firearms ban from our friends in Ottawa there, but probably won't see that on the market because, well, you're not supposed to have them. Technically, you're not supposed to shoot these either because they are now prohibited. So yeah, don't use them. Put them in your safe, forget about them, lock them up. But if you wanted to upgrade it for cosmetic reasons or any other reason you could think of, there are some nice options for you. Okay, that's about all I can think of right now for the Gen 2, Gen 1 WK. And as Grandma always says, if your neighbor asks you to plow at their house when he's gone on a business trip, he likely means the snow.